Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast, a show where each week we sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The Daily Ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, directed by Niels Arden Oplev, The Girl Who Played with Fire by David Alfredson, The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest by David Alfredson, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the American edition with David Fincher, and The Girl in the Spider's Web, directed by Fede Alvarez. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Tom. How about you?
I'm doing well. How did your week go of watching movies?
A special movie watching week because I dedicated my week to watching the Millennium series, which of course is, as you effortlessly went through all the girl names, the girl with the
I did my best.
It was. I was struggling myself. I wasn't even speaking, but it is a great week because I enjoy watching these movies all the way through, and 5 of them is a lot to unpack.
It's really heavy that you went through, but I mean, this is a fun kind of special that we have for everyone. It's something that would have probably never come to me when you told me that you were doing it. I'd love it. I mean, we're doing the.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that's been on my radar for a little bit, but yeah, I'm excited to talk about it because it's something that, for a lot of people, probably an unapproachable series of movies because they don't know where to start. Do you start with the foreign films? Do you maybe start with the American done?
How do they all follow each other?
Exactly.
Is it based on books too?
Yes, yeah. I believe it's all books, all novels. So a little bit intimidating to go. And I think for that reason, something genuinely I want to watch, but also genuinely hopefully useful as a tool to how do you tackle
the franchise kind of.
Exactly.
Are there more coming out as well?
I don't know. Obviously, we'll touch on the kind of left off point that the Girl in the Spider's Web is left off at for 2018 when it came out.
Yep.
But there was a massive gap before that came out. So.
Yeah. I love. It's so interesting just kind of looking up the franchise a little bit more, and I'm excited to hear about it too because I'm a little bit in the dark about it.
Sure.
Because the first 3 start all in Sweden, Swedish films, all released in the same year.
I believe
but with
Swedish novels too.
Okay, yeah.
It is a drama in Stockholm for all of the major films. I don't know how many books total in the series there are, but at least 4, if not probably more, because we touch on obviously a continuing story. These sequels, I will say for the watching audience at home, these sequels are absolutely direct sequels. There is no kind of jumping around, for better or worse. Honestly, I think these movies might be interesting if they went back and maybe designed them a little bit more open-ended, maybe a little bit... another addition into the world that this is in.
I love that we're exploring the world. I love that we're doing this special. And it's just weird because the first 3 all came out in 2009.
2009.
And you have 2 different... I would just assume then it would be all the same director, too, but you have 2 different directors.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why it was a separate director, but for the latter 2.
Right.
But presumably, I also don't know how how Swedish film industry works. So, maybe there was something creative differences unpacked, but all made very in quick succession. I think all within 2009. I don't think it even dips in 2010. So kind of a Lord of the Rings scenario as far as the production of it.
The books were Swedish, by the way. Came out after the author, a year after the author died, actually, is when they came out. And author died in 2004.
Look at that.
Books came out in 2005. I mean, that's according to the Book of Knowledge of Wikipedia. So.
Right.
Yeah, but no, all 2009 and decent length, all over 2 hours. I'm so interested, and I'm excited to hear about the American kind of version as well,
Absolutely.
or just the American stories following everything.
For sure. See where it
Especially
goes.
with Daniel Craig. But let's jump back to 2009. Let's start where it all started. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So these first three movies are referred to as the Millennium Trilogy. That refers to as Millennium is a magazine where one of our main characters, Michele Bloomfist, he is a reporter. Normally, I wouldn't give some background to this, but because all 5 of these movies center around the 2 central main characters, I would like to give a little bit of background here. Basically, you have Michele Bloomfist as a star reporter, runs a hardcore magazine that is designed around blowing up and spotlighting corruption around Sweden. We have then the second, the girl in these movies is Lisbeth Sanders, and she is going to be different roles in a lot of these films. Essentially, though, a hacker, a delinquent, someone that is on the run at times, but overall a woman that is manipulated, put into difficult situations from her childhood, but has incredible gifts like a photographic memory and proficiency with hacking that pretty much in every film you have a format that Mikhail is doing his own thing for his magazine and crosses paths once again with the girl of the various movies, Lisbeth Sanders. So that's the background to all of these. For The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, this is what kicks it off. This is what is going to start everything. And I think at the heart of what The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is about and why we see later on in 2011 David Fincher really wanting to direct this movie specifically, it is a dynamite script. At the heart, this is a movie about manipulation about data, manipulation of people, manipulation of information.
So especially for the first one, it's important to, you're trying to also build the world and get across, you have to get the characters across, and you're setting things up.
Absolutely. Almost to a certain extent that Michele, as the male, is almost the star of the show for, I would say, the first half of the film. You're kind of wondering, why is it so centered?
You're wondering where the girl is.
Exactly. Later on in the films, it does become her show, but this first film is very much a 50-50 split, which I think, again, shows the balance of the script, shows that it is about this concept that these characters are interacting with, not necessarily, let's see another chapter in this character's life.
Sure, okay, yeah.
Which is nice. Definitely goes to the strength of it. And again, it is a story about manipulation, and a thriller is spawned around that. I think that is the greatest strength, especially of the Swedish entry and this first entry for the Millennium Trilogy.
Okay.
We have the characters, being basically put across this task to track down a missing person and interacting with everyone manipulating into their lives. That concept of manipulation is definitely the central point of where the thriller aspect is for really all of these movies. So if that sounds good to you as an audience member, if you enjoy something like Silence of the Lambs or really any kind of thriller like that, maybe like a Mystic River even, it's definitely worth a watch to jump into one of these films and give it a shot. And I think no better spot is with the very first Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Not dubbed, correct?
It is dubbed. I looked it up online when preparing to watch this, and kind of like a watch order, very similarly, not knowing what the hell to do even from my position. Yeah. From my side, I've only found that the dub was unacceptable. Granted, online there's a lot of hardcore fans of this series, being a.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to go subtitles. The dubbing, I'm sure, just takes you out of it a little bit.
Exactly.
You're too focused on
the
dubbing itself, kind of.
Exactly. And that actually, you bring up a fantastic point, because one of the criticisms I have for the Swedish films, the first Millennium Trilogy, is the sound production. In particularly, a big thing that distracts from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo of 2009 is Man, a rough sound effects, rough score, almost. Exploring some
Interesting,
maybe some royalty-free music. I heard some different sound hits that I've heard before online. There was definitely.
I wonder Niels Arden Oplev. I wonder how much. I mean, obviously not much of a budget then. Like I was not. No idea who the director is, really.
Sure.
So I don't know how big he was at the time or how big he was in Sweden to take on the project.
Right.
I'm kind of surprised to hear that, though.
It's a shame.
The books were apparently huge.
Right.
I mean, I do know that enough to make a big hit. So you would think it would be a little bit of a heavy hitter. Like I thought it would be like kind of a blockbuster, especially
for sure, especially for such a Swedish-centric plot.
Yeah.
And them producing this film. I mean, it really was a hit. But
suffers there.
The good thing is, and not to give a peek into the later films, but this does get better. This is pretty much a criticism exclusively for this first iteration.
Okay.
So maybe it is tied to Oplev's specific directing, maybe his team. I don't know. It is absolutely something to note, though, because it took me out. Certain string hits, certain horns.
Are you rolling your eyes at one point, or is it just like, what the hell was that?
It took me right back to browsing free online sound effects.
Oh, okay. All right.
For maybe any video that I produced in the past or something like that.
Sure.
It just took me right there and definitely took me out of it for that reason.
Interesting.
Something to note, because other than that, I find that there's a lot of merit to this first film and a lot of originality to the script. And again, we'll return to this in 2011 for David Fincher. I have no doubt he wanted to return to this film and only this film and not touch anything else, because as the films progress, we get more and more focus on Lisbeth Sanders and her character development. This film stands alone as a phenomenal, phenomenal thriller, investigative.
Had it ended after the first one, it's like still a phenomenal movie.
Absolutely. Would be in the writing class of A Silence of the Lambs.
Wow, that's
absolutely
very, very cool. Okay.
Absolutely. And just as much of a spiral in the investigative work of the film, really, leaves you engaged on the edge of the seat. It's good stuff. When it comes to watching these films, and this is definitely a criticism
Sure,
across the board, probably until the 2018 film, but we'll get there for Into the Spider's Web.
Yeah.
For a movie central to hacking as a primary action of these characters, these are not cops. It's a reporter and a hacker. So their investigative work and how these characters interact with pushing the story along is gathering information. Mm-hmm. Some of that information is manipulated, but for the most part, this is them doing, sticking their nose to the grindstone, finding documents, using Lisbeth Sanders' photographic memory, her hacking skills. For something so central to the plot, the hacking is very disappointing, very dated. A lot of the scenes are just
from a 2021 perspective, watching it, or even like
I think even from a 2009, putting myself in those shoes as an audience, very dated.
Okay, all right. I mean,
or maybe let me refine what I'm saying a little bit here. I think it's uninspired, and that sounds a little critical. That sounds a little harsh.
Well, that's what you're here to do, though. But
that's true. But what I mean by uninspired is taking a look at what they're doing on screen. It is the shots are, let's show something that is being hacked or being monitored on the computer, and let's flash back to the character. I do not find that engaging in cinematography or a setup that we have. Information shot, reaction shot. Information shot, reaction shot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That takes me out of it. And I think for that reason, if there is anything preventing some enjoyment of a thriller like this that is not driven by law enforcement, a cop, yada, yada, is that the investigative work is the star of the show. And unfortunately, is not done very creatively. And that is definitely
falls a little flat.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're expecting better from something that's like where the writing is so good and engaging,
and where the primary action is hacking. You'd think there'd be some more inspired ways to introduce it around the characters or to show it on screen.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So again, a criticism to a very good film. it's got to take some knocks, and those are where the knocks are. Score and how the action, lightly on action, because especially for this first film, it's just all investigative work. How these characters are interacting with it, a little uninspired, at least from my perspective. Overall, though, a thriller from the eyes of a reporter, I think, is so good. As the action kicks up in these later films, as far as, literal explosions and, guns and yada, and criminals, this first film strikes such a good fear because they are not empowered at all. On this theme of manipulation, our characters are really de-emphasized, their power, their agency in the story. And I think for that reason, there is, a special spot for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that the later films just simply do not touch. And it is a delight to watch because as a thriller, you don't want your main characters to be a superhero or overcome every obstacle.
Yeah, of course.
They are on the back of their heels, constantly. So it is honestly a great watch, especially with understanding that there is so much more content if you do like it, if you do want to dive deeper. A little dated in some areas, but as far as the rating, we are going to go ahead and give The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo 2009 a 75.
75, okay.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a great watch.
I was thinking it might have hit the 80s.
I believe me, I think for how much I enjoy the story, it deserves it, but some dated
Those other
aspects,
elements, sure.
Absolutely. And it's almost a shame that Fincher revisits it in, 2 years?
Literally only 2 years.
Yeah, it's a shame that he revisits it so soon because, honestly, I think David Fincher, as far as a director, is a great match for the type of mood and atmosphere of this world. So, but we got a long way to go.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's jump on to the second one. Still came out in 2009, but this is David Alfredson behind directing. And it's The Girl Who Played with Fire.
Girl Who Played with Fire, again, I cannot stress enough, this is a direct sequel to the previous film, down to the moment that it is showing sequentially what happens almost seconds after the events we see.
Oh, very cool.
In the previous film. This is also true for the third film in the Millennium Trilogy. So probably an explanation of why these were filmed together. We did maybe out of fear of maybe aging, in the actors or something like that. But Girl Who Played with Fire, I think, is a great movie. There is a sweet spot that this hits. In the first film, Lisbeth is very toned back. She's put in places that depower her. I don't know what, not depower, but these characters are not empowered at all because of the message of what the first film is going for. Now that Lisbeth is more in the centerpiece, now that she has more agency, we see her in full glory, and it is great. She is kicking ass. She is powerful. She is sharp as a knife.
They're not she's not back on her heels anymore. She's just. She's
is in full effect.
Yeah.
And it is so much more of a joy to watch. I obviously think that Dragon Tattoo is going to be a film that you're always going to want to watch because that is really what it's about. It's about not having her, unrestrained. But for a sequel, it's kind of everything you want. You see her, really in full effect, and it's a great watch for that reason. The production is as well much more improved. The soundtrack, the score, those criticisms really go out the window.
Which is interesting because it's the same year.
And it makes me wonder what happened with the switch in directors. Maybe they saw that.
I mean, I like that we're coming through with just kind of open.
Right.
We're just accepting it how it is,
sure.
Because we didn't really look into the meat of it. I was wondering, maybe directed totally different times though. The book came out in 2005. Maybe it was directed in 2006, 2007, 2008, and they
just released. Possibly. Either way, though,
it's interesting, though.
That criticism is completely gone for these next two films, which I am really happy about. Because if I'm going to be watching the film in its native language, the whole point of that is to not have sound issues. Like you were even saying, Tom, along the lines of the dub. And that
there needs to be the fluidity of sound because there's so much going off sound then.
Absolutely. I'm happy to say that is out of the way. Where I think this sequel falls short a little bit is obviously the intellectual strength of the script. You have, again, a dynamite story for the first movie, and now that the world is opening up, we're seeing more of Lisbeth's life. We're seeing more of where the relationship between these two characters go. It's a little bit more conventional as far as the type of investigative work that is done, and a lot more action. This is both a good and a bad thing. This is kind of, for the rating of this, pulling the film in two directions for me. It's not, while it doesn't have the intellectual strength that I would say the first film has, it does have what you want to see throughout the entire film.
All the elements are still there.
Exactly. It has what you want to see the characters do in their full effect.
Okay.
Lisbeth being a hacking genius, manipulating the manipulators, playing them. That is arguably the best parts and the cathartic payoffs of the first film. This second film, it's all that. It is all meat.
Okay.
Which is great, and honestly was a joy to watch. I would say, for that reason, at no point more in this in this whole Millennium series, across the 5 films, did I say to myself, boy, I wish this could possibly stand alone apart, so I could show someone this and say, okay, now this is an entry point to it. But again, I have to make note, this is a 100% direct sequel and a middle point for even the third film as well.
But I couldn't go into it watching the second one and get enough of an idea what's going on.
You probably could.
But it would totally be lacking things.
Exactly.
I wouldn't get the full effect of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Especially if only in the relationship between our two main characters.
Okay.
But for that reason, I think while the overall plot, we have a little bit of a weaker script to it. It's going a little bit more conventional. It doesn't have this dynamite investigative thriller plot line. It is, again, what you're signing up for. The name of the game is, this is a film series about the girl and the blank. We are watching the girl at her best.
Okay.
And Lisbeth is absolutely a pleasure to watch on screen. We have the actress as well, which I think would be good to definitely give a shout out. Naomi Rapace. She later went into Prometheus, the Alien prequel.
Okay.
And a few other things. And then, of course, playing Mikhail is Vigo from John Wick. Yeah. He's obviously been in other things since, but this was, I believe, one of his first early performances in these first 3 trilogies. So, once again, both of these characters, a joy to watch on screen. And the reason why I'm bringing this up for this second film is, again, I cannot lean more into the fact that it is so great to watch them in a position that they can just kick ass and do what they do best. And it's a very empowering film for that reason.
What do we give it?
For that reason, I am gauging it a little bit higher. Again, I think for the rating here, folks, Girl Who Played with Fire is being kind of pulled in both directions, a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but I'm going to go ahead and give The Girl Who Played with Fire a 78.
Oh, wow. Okay, fantastic.
Ranking higher. Absolutely. Again, Dragon Tattoo, we'll have more to talk about it because it is remade, but a special place. Yeah. This, I think, is the series at its best, honestly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I wonder, had you taken the combined, David Alfredson's directing, and then with the writers of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
I think it probably would be better for the production side, like the score and the sound effects there.
But then again, we also don't know when it was shot. There's something going on.
There is something going on.
We could probably find it out right away. But
and I think this is natural too, because this is the type of mental gymnastics anyone has approaching this film trilogy. Where the hell do you start? What's going on with these movies? And why are there differences in how they're styled too?
I love it. Well, let's move on to the third one now, The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, the finale in the Millennium Trilogy, or at least the original Millennium Trilogy.
Right. Same director now, David Alfredson.
Yep.
Same head writer as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure these had to be filmed together.
They have to. And again, I mean, why were the Lord of the Rings filmed all together? Was it because of aging? Was it because of contracts?
No, because the production, totally different thing with that. That was the largest independent film, basically. One of the largest films ever made, or franchises ever made, but it had the independent feel. And they were just like left alone there. They had the money. It was all, and then same people, same sets a lot of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just made sense to do that all. They would come back for reshoots for 2 months then in between movies. So before the second one came out, 2 months of reshoots. The third one came out, 2 months. But that's Lord of the Rings, whole different story.
Either way, I think it's a
Sweden,
smart way to be producing these films, combining it all together. It does have a cohesion, that all these films are absolutely direct sequels.
Yeah. So with this one, how did this flow from second to third one with Girl Who Kicks a
Once again, to the point that it is seconds after the ending of the Girl Who Played with Fire. It is a direct sequel and finale.
Did it immediately have that feeling of, oh, this is the same director? I mean, this feels the same.
I think they all kind of feel the same. Honestly, in some of the research of seeing it, it would surprise me that the first one wasn't the same director.
Really? So it was just those small bugs that got worked out. The second one, where it's like, oh, this is better one. This
Absolutely.
is better. Okay.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe there's funding there. Maybe again, it kind of breaking down into the production, but this is absolutely though a must watch. Almost to the point, actually, for the viewing of this, for any of you in the audience, there is I believe it's a combined version just called Millennium that I believe it's just all three movies put together. There is also an alternative Swedish TV breakdown of this that has side plots to it. So if you're really loving this, that could be also an alternative way to watch this, especially for the original trilogy. But
very cool. Getting
into the Hornet's Nest, this is probably the best and the worst parts of both movies prior. We have great investigative work, a plot that is high octane but also intellectually engaging.
Sure, yeah.
Makes you think, makes you kind of question a lot of intentions. Again, the standout for this, especially this first three trilogy, again, the name of the game is manipulation. Manipulation of data, people, information, history. It's very interesting to unpack and watch as an audience member, especially for the first time around. But where this falls is that, and I'm laughing because Tom knows how much I don't like courtroom dramas. There is a courtroom drama smack in the middle of this film for some reason, and it crawls it to a halt. It is terrible.
Oh, that's such a shame.
I
such
know.
A shame.
Granted, there has to be some sort of vindication for these characters without that is legal, that is righteous or just.
But you're looking forward to be done in a different way.
Exactly. Or if you got to do it, make it real brief.
But impactful. Brief but impactful.
Exactly. And the courtroom aspect of this is massive. It is a big part of the film. And once again, we see Lisbeth in a position that she is de-emphasized again. The power is taken away from her, which is a shame because
you loves her seeing when she's going rock and roll, and
exactly.
it's phenomenal to see.
This film does stand out in the sense that we have other characters affected by Lisbeth in the relationship and showing that they now operate, they now think like Lisbeth, which is an interesting kind of arc for a third movie in a trilogy to show. But again, it's not who I want to show that type of action, to show who is interacting with these plots, especially as increasingly more and more these films become about Lisbeth very directly and her life and who she interacts with. And that's where I find it's kind of good and bad. Again, much more of a drastic split for the rating in that it's being pulled up and pulled down, and much more drastic.
Interesting.
To being pulled
yeah.
down.
Wow.
The suspense is there, though, so I
not
can't
during the court scenes, though.
No, definitely not. But the suspense.
So
is there.
Act 2 of the film is rough.
I would say second half of the film is, again, both good and bad. Basically, we have shots between this courtroom type of storyline, matching what's going on in the real world with this thriller element. And that's plenty engaging, but it's the pairing of both of these. We go from 60 miles an hour
You're on a roller coaster.
to crashing down to the slowest possible Swedish court. You know, it's already kind of hard to understand the proceedings. Like, how the hell does this court work? It's in conflict. The film is in conflict. I didn't know the writer is dead. I don't want to knock the script too much, but it seems like, especially as far as the script goes and the original work, Dragon Tattoo, that's the gold standard. That's where it's really, we get an inspired story.
Okay.
An inspired thriller as far as the plot goes. Beyond that, though, what's holding this back a bit is, again, we have hacking being uninspired for a story where the characters engage with the plot through hacking. Once again, I'm looking for something creative here. I'm looking for an interesting way to portray this on screen rather than a shot of a computer screen. Not that that information isn't important, but then just going to reaction shot.
Yeah.
It's like when you show someone texting on screen. There's got to be something new.
Yeah, there is a draw there.
Exactly.
It just kind of it draws it down a bit.
There's got to be a kind of an interesting way to portray that you have both on the screen at the same time. And not to give a peek into why I was so excited to see this done by David Fincher, but David Fincher in House of Cards, in his directing work, have made a lot of headway on how digital concepts or digital text was put into the same frame as character acting on the screen. So we'll see if that pays off. But as a conclusion to the trilogy, it's semi-satisfying. We have things being wrapped up in a very nice bow, which
it is. For
as dark as a trilogy as this really is, and really some intense scenes, definitely not for a soft stomach. If you're easily, affected by very intense sequences, things wrap up almost incredibly nice. And I feel that, honestly, it was a mismatch for where this film was going and where the trilogy needed to end, especially coming off of what I thought was a relatively weak film. When it comes down to it, we're going to go ahead and rank The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest a 59.
Wow, 59.
Mm-hmm. Definitely not bad. I would clock it in as above
definitely
average.
Not great.
But the thing is, I'm practical. If you are in for a penny, you're in for a pound. If you're 2 movies into this and you understand the third movie is
keep it going.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the idea that the second one is what you really feel is the best.
Yeah.
I mean, close to the first one, but because so much in trilogies, you know how much a second movie can suffer. Mm-hmm. So I love the fact that that's where it's really punching. That's where it's good. And then maybe the third one deserves to just kind of wrap things up a little bit and conclude the story. Because really you're watching, especially if you're like, oh, this picks up seconds after this, you're watching an 8-hour movie. It's basically what you're doing.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that then. Yeah. I mean, you're right. The third one I have no interest in, and you probably wouldn't suggest unless you go ahead and watch. You watch that first one, and you're there for the ride.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I could maybe even rank it lower than a 59, but the practical side of the ranking there, or the rating, is very simply that if you're in it already, it's definitely not a bad movie, and it's probably worth the watch in the sense that if you're in that deep, you're gonna watch it regardless.
Wow. So. I love that. And, okay, so for the original trilogy, 75% for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, 78% for The Girl Who Played with Fire, and for The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, 59%. That's awesome. So before we get over to the American kind of redos or following that story, just want to take a time here. Since it's kind of a special that we have here, we're not going to have a producer segment. We're going to thank the producers. We just want to put in a little pitch here. Remember, Vin and I, we are staying away from advertisers. We really just want to build a community with you. We want to be independent, and we're going through the value for value model. We don't want to look at you as listeners. We look at you as producers. So basically what we ask for is, did you get value in our production of the podcast? Are you enjoying it? Are you getting something valuable from it? Also, are you finding yourself going to our website, thedailyratings.com? Do you find yourself, wanting to know what a movie got? going there and checking it out and scrolling through and just kind of seeing what we have. We have an ever-expanding catalog of films as we start to get through more and more movies. We, starting to do fun things like this where we're doing specials, where we're doing actual franchises and everything like that. We love doing this.
How am I going to do a special from 2009 if I got to talk about a mattress in the ad segment?
or underwear. We could sell underwear right now. We were just
Raycon.
on about it just doesn't work that way. We're doing movies and we would love a little kickback. It does cost some money to be doing this. Mm-hmm. So we'd appreciate anything you go. You could do subscription plan. You can just give one-time donations. You can write a little bit of a note in your. We go through PayPal online if you'd like. Write a little note and we'll read it out loud if you want. Give us a shout out or say that you couldn't disagree more with Vin's ratings. It doesn't matter. Say whatever you want, and we'll read it too. But so if you could just do that, and we're trying to build a little community here, that'd be cool.
Absolutely.
And so we appreciate that so much. So again, it's dailyratings.com. Go to the donations tab, and again, check us out. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the American releases. 2 years now after. It's 2011. Yep. Very quick. All of this is very quick.
Probably, they wanted to act on the buzz off of it because these were big movies in Sweden.
They were, yeah. And the books, as we know, big sellers as well. Mm-hmm. So 2011, David Fincher now helming it. And we have kind of the remake, the American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Mm-hmm. We have Daniel Craig in there for the lead role of the male. We have Rooney Mara as Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. So what do we have? We have
a film that is almost beat for beat. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in the Swedish or in the 2009 release.
In a good way or bad way?
I think, again, both good and bad. I think it is a good thing because, all in all, when I look at that film, especially if I had to talk to someone that was very into thrillers, maybe they don't like foreign subtitles.
People do hate
Exactly.
Some people just can't sit.
Maybe you want a kind of a slicker, more of a dark package to it that David Fincher is obviously known for. After this, directing Gone Girl, there is a bit of a positive aspect to that being beat for beat. For me, from a critical perspective, especially watching the original work, I would describe this as derivative and in a negative way. This is not something that I feel Fincher put heart into to create something new. Granted, there is a challenge because he's coming up against something that is fairly
he's coming off the book that came out less than 10 years prior. He's coming out the movie that came out two years prior to him doing this. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he felt contained in a certain way.
Absolutely.
So he couldn't go full Fincher.
Exactly.
Right.
But for that reason, again, there is a positive to it. I think this film is exactly what I was craving for in the original trilogy, that if you just kind of want a one-off and experience arguably the deepest plot in the entire Millennium Saga, this is going to be the one that you want to jump into.
And it can stand alone again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it doesn't have
and it does stand
the
alone,
setup
really.
baggage that the original trilogies were obviously expecting to, with that production being so in line.
Yep.
And as you see, the next one in the American side is 2018, 7 years later.
Yeah, do you think Fincher had plans to make two more, or he wanted this to stand alone?
I don't know. I mean,
who knows with actual production and everything like that. Maybe they wanted one. Maybe they didn't think the trilogy would be worth it.
Possibly. I think there could have been. I mean, Daniel Craig, 2011.
He's big time.
Exactly. And that...
she looks cool as hell.
Absolutely.
How was she in the films? Great?
She's great.
Oh, good. She played this, so she
absolutely
held that character up well.
I prefer the original actress,
of course.
Just because... There is a quietness to it. What we see in the characters, that's a main difference between the Swedish and now these American movies, is they're much more bombastic, predictably. It's Hollywood. Yeah. It's going for more of a blockbuster. Also, another tonal change is we go from a very quiet, intellectual reporter investigative plot to more and more a spy James Bond type of theming.
Interesting. Okay.
Almost in the sense that, almost directly James Bond, because both of the openings, Dragon Tattoo 2011 and then In the Spider's Web 2018, we see an opening that is 3D CGI, very Bond visuals, very, very spy, kind of,
Did it come off well?
I think so. It looks a little bit dated, but
I'm
not going to be too critical there. I mean, what you got to do? Things look cool back then.
Right, right.
Yeah, but I think it sells because it's got to be a sexier package, and you got some, a very, very sleek, sexy story, and especially with David Fincher making it dark and edgy and brooding, it works. It definitely works. I think. I do have to note here, because as I said, my main gripe with this series is that for hacking being a main action of these characters, it being uninspired, my hope going into this film was David Fincher going to crack that as in an inspired way to show how that is done on screen. Unfortunately, we see him take the opposite direction, and that hacking is absolutely part of the plot line, but he leans much more into Lisbeth's photographic memory and more so kind of grassroots investigative work in books and records for her. We also see a lot less connection of the original trilogy with our two main characters. I bring this up because if there's any kind of factor that I would say probably was not a driver of audience excitement maybe for a sequel here, is that I don't think there's a lot of chemistry between Craig and
really?
Yeah, I don't think there is. It's there.
Interesting. It's really lacking.
And honestly, this saga, the Millennium Saga, is about that relationship between these two. Especially for the later films, if they were going to flesh out either the same or future ones, as we see in Girl with the Spider's Web. That is, of course, later in the chronology of the events of these books. So what we have here is a sleeker package, better editing. I believe this got the Oscar as well for editing that year.
All right.
Which I would definitely agree. It is... It has a dark tone to it that is honestly something that I could not take my eyes away from.
It hits.
And that's and that's definitely something that I've always admired about Fincher's style, when he's not directing commercials and Coca-Cola ads. So, but, that cleaner polish, that overall look, you could maybe call that surface level. I think once again, in the purpose of ranking this as a watch order, as a watching guide, as a practical guidance to getting involved and getting into this series, this is much more digestible for that reason, for being English spoken, a better look, not having those production sound problems. So a big thing to note, and definitely a big positive to this. You basically are left with this. You exchange the better feel, better sound, the better quality in production versus the elaborated detail that you're going to get in any original work. You're always going to have more detail in that first draft of something, because you can definitely see that, especially in that first Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, it is a love letter to that first book, presumably, to that original plot. And there's so much more details into letting the camera hang on characters, on relationships, on just what the hell they are investigating, where it is go, go, go on this 2011 rendition of it. So once again, the theme of all of these is kind of pulled in two directions, but overall, I think we're going to go ahead and give The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo 2011 a 72.
Okay, yeah, right in line. Right there.
Basically, take it or leave it for the first iteration, and I would say wholly interchangeable. Wow. If you plan on watching the trilogy, watch the Swedish movies. If you want to dip your toes into it, give this a shot.
Totally stands alone in a good way.
Exactly.
Very cool. All right, well, let's go on out. 2018. Quite the jump. We have The Girl in the Spider's Web with Fede Alvarez directing. What do we have?
A total change in cast is what we have.
Yeah.
There is a switch in characters, so it makes me wonder if some of the delay there is because there was just problems locking down Daniel Craig. There was just problems locking down.
Was that the case?
I can only imagine.
Or was this supposed to stand alone too?
2011, Daniel Craig's going into what movie? 2012. We got to be close to Skyfall by that time, right?
Yeah, Skyfall was 2012.
Yeah. So I think it's probably,
It could be maybe Hollywood, maybe production, everything. They want to make these standalone films and just now that you're entered into this world with the girl with the dragon tattoo, with the Hollywood version, maybe they're trying to do this.
Yeah, I mean,
and expand on it, and maybe we'll get more in the future.
Absolutely, and who knows, especially with the delays of things in 2020, if there is something in productions in the works, and we're just going to see it heavily delayed now. I think it's totally possible. What is mind-boggling about this film is that the girl with the
looked none of this up before. I love it.
It's yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's merit to that, folks. We're going into this series just like you want to go into it.
It is kind of nice.
Yeah. But what's mind-boggling about The Girl in the Spider's Web is that this is one of the latest or one of the farthest stories for Lisbeth in her...
in the world,
in the chronology.
So basically, we were, as far as the American versions go, where you don't have to deal with the subtitles, you're dealing with the first one.
Right.
Which is early on, building the foundation of who these characters are, what we're doing here.
Exactly.
And then the second one, known to people, is jumping extremely far.
Extremely far, to the point that it's going off of plot points of the third film, of the girl that kicked the hornet's nest. Now, granted, it's not necessarily...
Is it further in the world?
Absolutely.
So this is almost
by probably like two books, I believe, as far as what I researched.
Okay.
But it is going off of those events, not in the sense that it's saying, oh, yes, that third Swedish film is now canonical to what we're going for.
Maybe that was on purpose. Maybe it was just like, okay, we haven't explored this on film yet. And let's just have let's have these individual, I keep on saying it, but standalone films.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point. That's a good point.
But how does it stand?
It's rough because not only does it go off of events that have not been played out on the American side and just are implied to the film, which makes it very, very rushed and kind of confusing and not that complex of a plot, folks. I mean, this is not brain surgery here. On top of that as well, we have a complete tonal shift. Lisbeth is basically Batman in this film. It is now 100% a spy thriller, incorporating international agencies, nuclear codes. It is basically a spy film.
It's just not what the character was meant to be, kind of.
Yeah. And I hold some of the criticism of this isn't true to the character to, I don't know, maybe that's where the books progress. I haven't read the books.
Yeah.
Or, maybe that's just where it progresses normally, that Lisbeth's arc was always more and more increasing into higher stakes.
Sure.
And, so that's fine if what it is. As a film, though, it is not done well. It is not done well. Again, there is, we are in full Marvel mode. Characters are in situations and combat. There is no stakes. I have no doubt Lisbeth is getting out of this situation. I have no doubt any character that has a gun to them is going to come out with their skin still on. It takes everything out of why the thriller and the de-emphasized action of these early films, and Dragon Tattoo specifically, why it works. Because our characters go from the most vulnerable to Lisbeth is now literally a superhero Batman super spy.
Oh, boy. So it's Hollywood. It's the only one under 2 hours, so it's just like, get in there. Let's give him, like...
Right.
Is it a big show? Is it just like...
It's the thing is, and don't get me wrong...
Big bangs and loud noises, and then...
and she, Lisbeth is badass. There's cool sequences in this film. Don't get me wrong, but where the change from... why that was such a huge positive for me with Girl Who Played with Fire, that the action and it empowered Lisbeth. where that was good is because it had the moments that made me care and the vulnerability that made me, actually pay attention to this film. Once again, I mean, right from the beginning, Elizabeth is a vigilante attacking men who are it's such a mess. It is such a mess. And then she gets wrapped up in these government agents. It's a mess. Honestly,
what a way to end it.
It seems like the first draft of the James Bond film that they would have led by a female if they did female Bond. It honestly feels like it's something that got thrown out and they're like, you know what? Obviously this is a book.
That's an interesting take.
It really does. And again, keeps that opening, keeps a very visualized, kind of, stylized opening. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely worse films. So when it comes to the action sequences on their own, I'm going to actually compare this film to a Star Trek Beyond, the third in the Star Trek remake or reimagining films. Definitely not a Star Trek film if you know that film at all, but if you just kind of look at it on its own and for what's going on the screen as not something true to the material, but just kind of as a romp in the world, this is very similar in that regard. It is not anything but a brainless action film, but it has all the dressings and the stylings of the world that I've come to love by watching all these. So,
So how are we ending this now? How are we putting a bow on it?
Let me check if there's anything else I had to do. Turn your mind off. Stead's stylist. Oh, the hacking. I'd be remiss if I didn't say the hacking is at its best in this film. Because the NSA is involved and it's still, honestly, it don't get me wrong, it is not provided in a way that, or is not portrayed in a way that satisfies what I've been criticizing, that it's uninspired how it's introduced on screen and cinematography-wise. But it is a small highlight to this film. Characters have little stakes, and I can't stress enough that takes the wind out of the sails so much in a very rooted, grounded film that it was always about that you don't know what's going to happen to these characters because they're going up against, impossible odds, but vulnerable to those odds. The stakes are as high as they can be in this film, but all these characters have plot armor at this point, and maybe in that point in the series, it's just a reunion show almost. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up, folks, giving The Girl in the Spider's Web a 35.
All right.
Again,
for what you were saying, 35 sounds about right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as unfortunate as that is.
Exactly.
I hope maybe we get more than in the future.
Yeah.
And something we could revitalize. I mean, how cool would it be if David Fincher came back?
Absolutely. I think a lot could be done with it. And again, I'm sure there's more books in this saga that could be fleshed out. But yeah, it was fascinating to watch. I was very happy to do one of these type of projects because as Tom
this
knows,
was cool. I'm glad we did this. Is like we're gonna do these. We do have more specials coming up too, folks, where we kind of take a franchise and go after it. It's enjoyable. It's kind of fun, and that way, a lot of people like to watch the movies together, especially the trilogy in Sweden. Like, those should be watched together. Whether you watch them in the same night or the same week is not the point. The fact is,
absolutely.
You watch one or the two of them, and you're interested and kind of know about the whole franchise. So we kind of like going about it this way.
Absolutely. I think it hits a sweet spot as well for just a practical guide. As we like these ratings to be a watching guide, what is better to have a series watching guide to this? So, trilogies and whatnot. So, absolutely.
Well, Vin, is there anything else, or should we roll the credits here?
That's about it. Let's roll it. Okay.
Alrighty. So just to wrap up, folks, the Swedish releases in 2009, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, 75. The Girl Who Played with Fire, 78. The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, 59%. And then the Hollywood releases for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in 2011, 72%. And The Girl in the Spider's Web, 35%. So we thank you so much for stopping by. We hope to see you next time. And remember, go to thedailyratings.com where you can see so much more. We appreciate it. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating. Or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast, become a producer. Go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value that you feel you received from our product. You'll get a mention on the next podcast episode, too. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.